So let's talk about something that sounds completely out there. We all know AI is a huge deal, but it has two massive problems here on Earth. It uses a mind-boggling amount of energy, and it generates a ton of heat. Well, what if the solution wasn't here on Earth at all? What if we just launched our data centers into the freezing vacuum of space? It sounds like pure sci-fi, I know, but the timeline for this is, well, it's shockingly close.
And there it is, straight from Elon Musk himself. Not a decade from now, not some far-off dream, but maybe within 24 months. That is an absolutely stunning prediction. So today, we're going to unpack the real science and the pretty unique strategy that can actually make this happen. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get into the big idea itself. Then, we'll dig into why space is actually the perfect spot for AI. After that, we'll look at the blueprint, how SpaceX is actually planning to build it. We'll even peek inside the crazy culture that makes these things possible. And finally, we'll ask, what does this all mean for the future?
Okay, so first up, let's just get the basics down. What exactly is this plan? And maybe more importantly, what massive problem is it really trying to solve?
The idea, when you boil it down, is as simple as it is audacious. You take these enormous server farms that power our AI, the sprawling buildings that eat up land and electricity like a small city, and you just launch them into orbit. Up there, they can soak up the sun for power, solving some of our biggest problems down here in one single move. And that, of course, leads to the big question, why on earth would you go through all the trouble and expense of launching something so complicated into space? Well, the answer comes down to two very fundamental things: heat and energy.
And this chart, man, it just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the Earth column. To cool these things, we spend a fortune on energy. They're totally dependent on our power grid, and you need a ton of land. Now look at space. Cooling is totally free and passive. You've got unlimited solar energy, and, well, you've got all the space you could ever want. The advantages aren't just minor tweaks. They're baked into the laws of physics.
This number right here, this is the secret sauce. 3 degrees Kelvin. That's the temperature of deep space when you're in the shadows, away from the sun. It is almost as cold as it is physically possible for anything to get.
And just for a little context, 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. It's the point where atoms literally stop moving. So 3 Kelvin is just a tiny, tiny fraction above that. It's a cold that makes Antarctica feel like a beach vacation. This incredible cold turns space into the ultimate heat sink, basically a giant free radiator that can suck up all the waste heat your computers can possibly generate. And the engineering solution here is it's so elegant. You have one side of the data center with solar panels, always pointed at the sun, just soaking up endless free power. And then the other side has a big radiator pointed away from the sun into that 3 Kelvin abyss. It just passively radiates all the heat from the chips into the void. It costs 0 energy to run. It's brilliant. Okay, so the physics checks out. It makes sense, but how in the world do you actually build something like this in orbit? Right, let's move on to the blueprint and see how this whole plan is built on everything SpaceX has already done. When you break it down into steps, the whole thing starts to feel a lot more real. Step 1 is the launch. They've got the rockets for that. Step 2 is deploying everything, unfurling the solar panels and radiators. But here's the big question, right? How does the data get back to us without a huge delay? And that is where step 3 becomes the absolute game changer. You connect it. See, here's the key thing to remember. SpaceX isn't starting from zero here, not even close. They have the rockets. They already have a global communication network flying overhead with Starlink. They've been managing huge constellations of satellites for years. They're basically just adding a new, really powerful type of satellite into a system that's already up and running. By plugging into Starlink's laser links, the data can zip around the world in space and then beam down to the closest ground station, keeping that lag time super, super low. But, tech is one thing. To pull off something this ambitious, you need more than just rockets and satellites. You need a certain kind of human engine. So let's take a look at the culture that makes a project like this even thinkable. This quote from a former leader at the company, wow, it really just says it all, doesn't it? This is not your typical corporate job. It's a culture that is built from the ground up on a foundation of relentless, nonstop urgency. So, where does that come from? Well, it turns out it's a culture that's deliberately engineered for speed. It all starts at the top, with Musk actively encouraging intense competition between his own teams.
This leads to what they call a fail-fast mentality. The idea that it's way better to launch something, have it fail, learn from the data, and try again quickly, rather than spend years trying to make it perfect on the ground. That philosophy is what makes a 2-year timeline for something like this actually seem possible inside those walls. And this anecdote from an internal meeting is just so revealing. Musk apparently told his team that he wanted to make his own Dragon capsule, their incredibly successful money-making spacecraft, obsolete. He wanted to be the one to build its replacement before anyone else even had a chance. I mean, seriously, stop and think about that for a second. What kind of company actively tries to kill its own golden goose? It's the complete opposite of a normal corporate mindset, which is all about protecting your successful products. This is a culture of pure, relentless forward momentum, even if it means destroying your own greatest hits. So, you see, this whole thing, this obsessive drive to make your own stuff obsolete, it's not just about building better rockets or space data centers. It's about building a platform for an entirely new kind of future. So, for this last part, let's zoom out and look at what that future really is. I mean, just look at how technology has consistently shrunk our world. We went from taking months to cross an ocean by sail to days by train to hours by jet. The next leap, the one powered by the exact same Starship rockets that would launch these data centers, brings global travel down to a matter of minutes. That's the end of the roadmap. And that's where it all comes together. This isn't just about one project. Mastering cheap, reusable rockets creates a platform for everything else, from AI in orbit to getting you from New York to Dubai in under 20 minutes. It fundamentally changes our concept of distance. Which kind of leaves us with this final question. As we watch all of this unfold, are we just witnessing the next logical, inevitable step in human technology? Or are we watching one of the biggest, boldest, and riskiest bets in history? I think the answer is going to show up a lot sooner than we think. Not in decades, but probably in the next couple years.